Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about a little something I call my story of arrested development. So I want to talk about that a little bit and what that means. So as far as arrested development, just to give you a very clear definition, overall arrested development means stoppage of growth. So literally growth being halted, right? So what I want to do is I want to talk about the emotional arrested development that I personally have experienced, because one thing that I never ever assume anymore is that I'm the only person going through those kinds of things, and I don't believe that for 1 second that I'm the only person that has experienced what it is I want to talk about with emotional arrested development tonight. So I'm gonna just hop into it, right? So I got a couple notes because I didn't want to leave anything out as far as what I wanted to talk about. So if you see me looking at my notes, don't judge me, okay? I am forgetful sometimes, and I didn't want to forget because this is important. But so yeah, arrested development meaning stoppage of growth. So I want to talk about that from the side of our emotions, right? So a friend of mine, shout out, Being Amari, Lamp Productions, whoop whoop. She shared a couple things on her Insta story actually, and it hit home for me because it's something that I feel like I talk about and we have talked about quite frequently. But she mentioned how people have, basically heard her out at times as far as things that she was experiencing and going through, but after that it just kind of like fell off, where no actual concern beyond that immediate moment was given. And she went into some other detail about that, which I won't get into at this moment. But the point is that happens more often than we care to admit. We end up, having conversations with people. We end up bearing our soul, crying our eyes out, all of these different things. And we're sharing our lives and our situations with people. And we get dropped. We get lost in the sauce, or whatever the case, whatever the case may be, however you want to explain it. Nothing happens beyond that conversation, or maybe you get another conversation, maybe. But as far as there actually being care and development and relational strength being put behind you, it lacks very, very much. Nothing to really speak of, right? So what ends up happening is you end up feeling really taken for granted, because for me personally, just to bring this full circle, I'm the kind of person where I love helping people. That's what my business is about. That's something that has always been the theme of my life from childhood to now. Quick background, I am a PK, so everything about my life has always been about, serving other people, because my family has been a ministry-oriented people. And I don't have a problem with that to this day. I am not a church hurt person, and I am not a person that, disdains helping and is burnt out from helping. That's not where I'm coming from, just to be clear. I love the people of God, and I love people in general. So I want to explain that, just to give you some backdrop on where I'm coming from, right? So what happens is you end up feeling a little taken advantage of, or taken for granted, though, because you're doing all of this helping and you're being there, you're being the rock, being the backdrop for somebody else and pushing them forward, but you don't always get that same thing in return when you need it the most. And that is a very, very, very difficult thing that personally I am still learning to navigate, because that's just the way it tends to be for the person who is the ear, or the person that is the shoulder to lean or cry on, the person that is your go-to for emotional and moral support, right? Those people that we go to, how often are you that for them, or how often are you checking up on the person that needs it? I love the Bradburys. Long live the Bradburys. But yeah, so this is something that happens all the time. Like, there's been memes going around, check on your strong friend, because a lot of times people are dealing with depression, they're dealing with suicide, they're dealing with all sorts of things that are really connected directly to our emotions and how we as people struggle with navigating our emotions. And that is a problem. We have to learn how to navigate our emotions. So just wanted to, square that away as far as the introduction and the onset for what I'm talking about with this emotional arrested development, because what I have experienced recently has been a lot of that, where emotionally I just hit this like stuck kind of place, because it was like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and it was cool. But now that the tides have turned, and now I need some attention, I need some focus to be on me, I need some help for my own self. Where can I go? Where can I get that? I've been the support for you. I've been the shoulder for you, but I'm not really feeling like I'm getting that same kind of support in return, right? So I've been there. I am there. I feel like we have all been there at some point if you're not there right now. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit, right? And y'all have to forgive me. My voice is very weak because we just got out of Bible study and I was leading the class tonight and my voice is tired. But we're going to do this anyway because I'm here for it, okay? So another thing that happens as far as once you experience these things, you feel taken advantage of, you feel taken for granted, but you also feel very lonely. Loneliness is a complete struggle for people who are usually seen as the strong friends or the strong ones. They usually struggle with loneliness because, again, you're pouring out your virtue and not always receiving the same kind of support in return. And that's a very, very, very hard thing. And even furthermore, to add to that, loneliness is even more of a struggle when you're talking about somebody who is in some kind of ministry, when you're dealing with people that are constantly serving from a spiritual and natural capacity. Loneliness is something that always comes to like really, really beat us up. It just is a thing. It's a part of our, our fight and our battle when it comes down to ministry and serving people. It's something we signed up for when we said yes to the call. But as friends of those people, you need to know this so that you know how to properly help them and how to properly pray for them, all of that good stuff, right? So I'm just throwing these things out there because these are things, again, that I have personally experienced, am experiencing, and will experience because this is a part of just the journey. So I'm just trying to lay these things out because I think sometimes we have these feelings and we don't always know how to express those feelings outwardly. It might not come out properly, I should say. We'll express our feelings when it comes down to getting into arguments or situations with people, fighting, arguing, cussing folks out, whatever. It might come out in those harsher ways. But as far as communicating and actually expressing our thoughts clearly, we don't do a good job at that. I don't want to hear no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We don't do a good job at expressing our emotions clearly with words that are not cuss words, that are not us going off on somebody. We can call it venting all we want to. There is a healthy way to vent. There's a healthy way to solve conflict and all of that. So anyway, that's just my little 2 cents on that real quick, right? So another thing that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so we talked about feeling taken advantage of. We talked about feeling taken for granted. We talked about loneliness, right? So here's the thing. If you have a friend who's usually the strong one and now they're reaching out to you for support and for help, then what is it that you're doing to follow up with them after they've expressed their hurt or expressed their pains and all of these things? What is it that you're doing to follow up with them? So from the beginning, I said that this was going to be my story, right, of arrested development. So let me be vulnerable with y'all real quick so you know it's real. I'll be transparent, right? Hi, Rube. One of the things that I experienced was, let's see, this is 2018. Last year, I turned the big 30, right? 30 years old. Man, when I tell you 30 came and mollywopped me upside my head, okay? Whew! Listen, different ages bring about different tests, trials, emotional things, hormones, whatever. All of the above. It brings about changes. When you hit certain chronological ages, there are changes that go on. Whether you realize it at the time that that's what it is, really doesn't matter because it's going to happen anyway, right? So for me, 30 just really hit me upside my head. Like I said, I got full mollywop because there was just different things that started to brew in my own heart, like desires and different things that I had visions and dreams that I, honest to God, had forgotten about, but all of a sudden they was coming back like real hard and real strong, and I'm like, what is going on? I don't know what to do with all of this. It's like overwhelming when you have all of these different things hitting you, and it's like, oh man, this is what's been in my heart and I forgot all about it. I'm coming alive, but I'm dying at the same time. It's crazy. So at least that's what happened to me, right? The big 3-0 came and just whooped me upside my head. So I was going through all of these different feelings of transition. Transition is a very, very big word because it's something that is unavoidable, and it's something that we will all go through or are going through, right? Transition. Nothing wrong with it, but you do have to go through it healthily, emotionally, because otherwise it can go very, very bad. But anyway, back to the story, right? So I'm going through all of this transition. I hit 30. I got these old desires and dreams and visions in my heart that are now coming back alive again. But at the same time, I'm feeling like me as an individual, I'm changing. And I'm just like, okay, wait a minute. Wait one gosh darn minute here, folks. How in the world am I supposed to handle going through all of these changes and realizing my heart's desires all over again from things that I had just forgot all about? But then I, as a person, am changing as well at the same time. Like, whoa, what am I supposed to do with this? So to wrap this part of the story up, it had been, I don't know, maybe a few months into the year where I had a whole meltdown and couldn't express myself beyond this analogy. And I've shared this with some of the people that I'm close to, and have just shared it with out of just my experience. But I'll share with y'all tonight. The only thing I could compare it to was the kids movie Inside Out, where the girl is like, going through this whole meltdown of her own because her family has relocated to a complete new city. She happens to be in a chronological, state of transition herself because of the age that she was. And so her whole world has now changed, but it's also changing on the inside, not just on the outside. So she's like freaking out and having these meltdowns and having these different situations go on, right? If you haven't seen the movie, you're just going to have to watch it to really understand what I'm referring to here, because there's no way I can do it justice in the amount of time that I'm going to be on here. So I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, because you just should watch it anyway. It's a great movie. But one of the things that I realized was happening to me that was the same from out of this movie is there were these pillars that this young girl had in her life and had, as her pillars of strength, if you will. It was her family. She loved hockey, fun. She loved, having a good time. Those are some of her pillars. But throughout the movie, you'll see where those pillars just became ash pretty much because they were crumbling down, and she was losing it because she didn't understand, these things that were going on. But the end of the story, spoiler alert, it was because new pillars were going to be in its place, but she didn't know that at the time, right? She just freaking out because her whole world is changing, like I said, inside and outside. So to bring it full circle, that's what had been going on in my heart and in my mind and around me by the time I hit 30 years of age last year. So again, these pillars are falling and crumbling, and my world is changing inside and outside. I don't know what to do, right? So I end up having this whole meltdown, had to go home to my mom and dad just to spend some quality time. That's one of my love languages. Shout out to Dr. Gary Chapman. Anyway, love languages is a big thing for me. But anyway, so had to go home and spend some quality time with my mom and dad just to kind of feel like refueled and feel just kind of like normal. That's the only way I can explain it, just to get some normalcy, because so much I just felt was overwhelming me at that time. But anyway, I did that little trip, felt a little bit more refreshed. That definitely helped. Didn't solve anything, but it definitely helped me to just keep fighting, right? So anyway, follow-up. That's my whole point. That was just a little segue of my personal story. But follow-up. Yeah, my mom and dad are amazing. Those of you that have met them, you know that they're incredible people. I love them with all of my heart. But I can count on them to follow up with me, because they're mom and dad. They're supposed to. At least my parents. I know they will. But when it comes down to some of our friendships, some of our friends are not good at follow-up. And Lord knows this is definitely something I have to constantly grow in, because I'm not good with following up with people. It's just not my best thing. If you're in my like actual locale, city wise, I can see you, I can call you, visit you, whatever. I definitely do a lot better if you're in my vicinity. If it's long distance, I'm sorry, y'all. It's so many of y'all that I love, but it's hard. But anyway, the point is, we do need to grow in that, just as a people, as a millennial generation. We need to grow when it comes down to our follow-up with people, because our strong friends, the people that, are bearing their heart and their soul to us, we're supposed to be there for them, but we're only able to be there right in that moment. Maybe that's a whole nother bunny trail, but we're there for them in that moment. And then what? Back to your regularly scheduled program. And I'm telling you this because this is stuff that I have experienced, and it frustrates the life out of me, but I want to communicate it in a way to where we can maybe think differently about how we treat people, but also just to expose how things are so that other people can be free and healed as well, because we got to do better, y'all. We just got to do better. But I want to move right along with what it is I want to talk about so that I'm not here for a long time. So you have people that, pour their heart out, but then, because there's no follow-up or there's no proper support for those people, what ends up happening is they are obviously going to be very hurt and disappointed, very jaded. And then because some of it is their expectations not being met, yes, and that's a whole nother bunny trail right there as far as false expectations and how that gets you set up for the woo every time. However, that's not where I'm going with this. I'm just talking about how people should be able to rely on their friends and their family to support them in times of need. That's the way a healthy situation should go. We're not going to get into our dysfunctional families and our dysfunctional relationships. That's not what I'm talking about either. But there is a point where my expectations should be that you will be there for me, especially if that is the kind of relationship that you have. I've been your support, you should be mine. It should be a mutual thing. It should be a two-way street. It should never be a one-way street kind of thing, right? Okay, so with that said, I can't remember how the quote directly goes, but one of my good friends, Carl Wright, he wrote a book about his life story called Touched, and I love this quote that he took from someone else and put in his book. But to sum it up, it says, if people wanted the story basically to go better, then they should have acted differently. By the time you're telling the story, by the time you're relaying the message of how things went, they may not like how you relayed them in that story because they thought that they was the knight in shining armor or something, and they were not, and your story leaves them out because they didn't get what you thought you were given, or whatever the case may be. They should have behaved differently in order to get different results. But anyway, I'm totally messing up the quote because I don't have it written down. I can't remember what page it was on. But anyway, the point is, by the time people are hurt, how things come out is going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. And so are you the friend that can handle that? Are you the friend that can get through those hurtful conversations, those harsh words? Are you the person that can fight through that and see through that? Or are you the person that's going to just take it completely all personal and then be holding a grudge and then, give people the cold shoulder and push them away even more because of whatever is being said or not being said? These are just questions that we need to answer about ourselves and about the people that we call our friends, right? So we're dealing with now hurt and pain and the need for healing because you've had your feelings hurt by people that you thought you could rely and depend on, and they're not there for you, right? So myself included, I've had to deal with all sorts of, discouragement and accusations and all of these kinds of things because the support that I feel like I need, I don't feel like I get, and it hurts because you feel like you've given that out but you're not getting it in return, right? That's a hurtful thing. It just is what it is. But the point is, healing has to take place, and of course only true wholeness and healing can come from the Lord. I don't care what your background is, what your belief systems are, it just is what it is. Jesus is Lord, and He is the only one that can heal and restore. However, if you are not open and honest about that process, I don't know how far you're going to get in your healing journey. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, then you're lying to yourself and you're stunning your own growth, right? So that's just another 2 cent type of thing. But my point is, we have to learn to heal so that we can move beyond. And that's where the arrested development comes in. Like, hurt will stop you and cause you to be stuck in a place. And unless you learn to be healed, then you will not ever get beyond. You will never get to wholeness. You will never get to whatever your aspirations or goals are, at least not in the fullness. You might accomplish some things just because you're a hard worker and you know people and they help you out with, different things as far as networking and connection. A lot of us talk really, really well and can talk our way through things even though we're inside not whole and not healed, right? I mean, let's be real. But yeah, you absolutely have to learn how you need to heal, because in some ways it might be writing things out, in other ways it might be having hard conversations. I mean, there's all sorts of ways healing can take place. I don't want to limit how God heals and how you need to be healed, because it just depends on the situation and it depends on you as well. So I don't want to get overly specific and shut any options away or shut options out. But the point is, you won't be fully whole if you don't fully heal, right? So lastly, my soapbox ends with talking about family dynamics. Some of us have come from broken homes. Some of us have just come from dysfunctional families in general. So our experience level is very limited as far as what we have to rely on when it comes down to giving out love. We don't know what agape, true, love looks like, unconditional love looks like, because we may not have received it in any form or just small ways. I don't know your story, but it's all about those family dynamics. And if you have poor experiences, it's going to honestly, in all seriousness, make you a poor friend. If you don't have healthy family dynamics, it's going to absolutely be a very poor dynamic friend-wise, because you don't have much to relay it to when it comes down to your experiences with people, because our families are our first friends. Our family is our first interpersonal relationships, and if those aren't healthy, then how are you supposed to be a good friend when people need you the most, right? So I'll wrap this up. I didn't want to be on here long, so I hope this isn't too long. But it's just about really, really showing true love to people beyond what you have experienced. And the only way that you can do that is to really be whole, to not be holding on to grudges and not be holding on to offense and bitterness, because bitterness, this quote has stuck with me for so long now. Bitterness is like drinking a poison yourself and expecting the other person to die. And that is not how this works at all. Never did it ever. So the thing is, if you are not whole, you cannot truly be true love to someone else when they need it most, because you're not whole and you're not fully receiving love either, because you're blocked up by all of these things. We're in a place of arrested development. So to close this thing out, all I wanted to say is that, myself included, I am still learning and working through emotional arrested development in different ways, just for me personally, because all of the changes that I've gone through in such a short, compact amount of time. But the point is, we have to learn what wholeness really, really looks like so that we can be better friends. We got to do better, y'all. Don't ever let somebody pour their heart and soul out, telling you the things that they're going through, and then it be just left to maybe that one or maybe even second conversation, and there's no follow-up. There's no checking on them, and there's no other conversation or support in place. Man, don't be that person that leaves people out hanging. Don't be that person that leaves your friends hanging out to dry without any support, emotional support, or just like, hey, let's just do something fun to take your mind off of things. Whatever it takes. Don't be the person that leaves all of that stuff and doesn't do those things, because you just never know, man. People are really struggling with depression, even though they might seem happy. We lie, okay? People lie. I lie. We lie, okay? We act like stuff is better than it is, because in some small way, maybe that makes us feel better to fake the funk and that whole thing, fake it till you make it kind of thing, has some of us bound to. But anyway, my point is we got to do better. We need to love better, but the only way we can love better is to be whole for real. And the only way to be whole for real is to communicate and express ourselves in truth about where we're at and why we're here, feeling the way that we're feeling. Like, why am I feeling this way? Why is it that I'm thinking these thoughts? You know what I mean? Like, let's just do better. Let's be better friends. Let's be better lovers of one another as our brother's keeper. Like, it's real out here. So I just wanted to express a little bit of that. Y'all can message me, DM me, or whatever, your thoughts or some other topics I'm open to talking about, because I want to do this a little bit more. So peace. Love y'all.